just indicate whether or not you're hearing us all right. If that is good to go, then we will get started. Andrew, in the chat window, ask them to confirm. There we go. Okay.
Good.
Thanks for being on top of that.
Like I said, Tom Cruise says.
Okay. Again, thank you for joining us this morning. We've got a very good panel to help us through a couple of things we want to do for you today. One, if you're an existing EasyProcure subscriber, we're going to show you some tips, some ideas, and some recommendations of how to maximize your EasyProcure participation, which has a set of rewards attached to it. And if you're not an EasyProcure user, we want to give you some information to help you make decisions and to do some follow-up steps as well. I'm Jay Himes. I'm PASBO Executive Director, and I'll show you the panel today that you're going to be hearing from. In 1 second or three, you're going to hear from Katie Belcher. She's a Treasury Management Officer with PNC Financial Services. At the far end of the table, who you can't see yet, but you will, there we go, thank you, Andrew, is Antron. He's also a Relationship Manager in Public Finance with PNC. You will also hear to my immediate right, Brent Kessler. Brent is the Business Manager at Central York School District. He's going to be our school district expert and show you steps he has taken to, again, maximize his rebate and provide efficiency in the business office. And you'll also hear from the man who does not have a name. He is simply known as RC with the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund. So I want to thank everybody on the panel for being with us, and again, thank you for joining us as well. This will be about a 45-minute session. We'll provide answers to any questions you have at the conclusion of the presentation, but we will stay within the hour. We know you have other competing interests, such as school opening in the next few days, and so we'll stick to our schedule and take you through this comprehensive, but we will do it in a fairly rapid fashion. As you know, when you get to the end of the program, questions and answers you can insert in that text box in the lower left-hand corner. We appreciate any questions you may want to have answered, and if you use that, we'll have a record of all those questions asked as well. Here's the quick agenda. We're going to cover any number of things related to the theory behind utilization of procurement cards, how they may differ from standard unsecured credit cards, but also to show you the specific tools and tips that you can use in helping you, again, to maximize your rebate and to provide some efficiency in the business office. Let me just take you through a quick, very quick history. We began about 12 years ago. We actually, PASBO, retained a consultant because if you'll remember 12 years ago, you probably didn't have a credit card or certainly didn't have a procurement card. If you did, you were likely going to be paying a fee to have them. And so in an effort to provide some value to our members, we took our consultant study and we said, let's create a procurement card program. Let's get rid of cost to participate, and let's use it in order to secure rebates. We put that into play, and we joined with all the organizations you see in those logos at the bottom of this slide. Our Superintendents Association that we share a building with right here, the School Boards Association, and the Pennsylvania School District Liquid Asset Fund. We came together, we created a structure, and we've been operating ever since. We're about headed into our 13th year, and I'm going to show you a few of the statistics associated with our growth over that time. So we do have a teenager, but here's how the teenager started. In 2005, we had a handful, literally a handful of school districts, and as you'll see, we have had significant growth, and hopefully we're going to break through that 300 barrier. Not only some school districts, but a few other local government entities as well. So right now at 279, and again, we hope by the end of this year we will be at that 300 level. This chart shows you the annual growth in spend, the amount of utilization in dollars that all the EasyProcure subscribers are using for their EasyProcure card purchases. We've had significant growth every year, and some, in terms of average, 24% since we started the program. In actual dollars, as you'll see at the far right side of this chart, we came awfully close to hitting the $100 million mark. That will be our benchmark for this year as well. One of the things we've been able to do is as our spend increases, we also increase the rebate back to you. It operates in an individual and collective way, and Brent's going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the more spend, the more value back to you in terms of your rebate. Again, both individually as a user of the EasyProcure card and collectively as the almost 300 participating entities that we have. We've been able to work with our partner, PNC. We've had 1 year of a rebate that was a special bonus, and that was the previous year, 14-15. If we hit that $100 million spend mark, we will have another bonus of $100,000 back to participating members. So it's important for us to get to that $100 million again. We just missed hitting it this past year. So that's good for anybody new in the program or enhancing their spend. We will see, I'm pretty sure, that $100 million special bonus in addition to all of our other royalty payments back from PNC. All right, so I'm going to turn this over to Katie, and she'll walk you through several of the information she's accumulated to show you how procurement cards are a significant benefit in terms of not only utilization of the card itself, but efficiency in your business. Kate?
Great, thank you, Jay. By way of a brief introduction, as Jay mentioned, I'm a Treasury Management Officer with PNC Bank. My primary job function consists of developing, analyzing, and identifying automated solutions to maximize working capital. I manage a portfolio in Philadelphia, the surrounding suburbs, and southern New Jersey, and I work with our EasyProcure clients in those markets. So I'm going to begin by talking about trends we are seeing in the payable space, and then look at the payment economics behind those trends to discuss, maybe why we're seeing some of that. So if we flip to the next slide. So the statistics on this first slide are from a study that we look at every year that is produced by the Association of Financial Professionals. It's a general payment survey that's backed by data from over 500 respondents from organizations in all different industries and all different sales sizes. Some of the key takeaways are listed on this slide. So 79% of organizations surveyed are seeking to convert paper checks to electronic payments. 88% say that their primary driver is to increase efficiency. 82% say it's to reduce costs, and 60% say it's for fraud prevention. As it relates specifically to the purchasing card, the rebates earned for higher volume use are also a key driver. These results are driven from real payment costs incurred by organizations like yours, and likely confirm what you already know. Checks are significantly more expensive than electronic forms of payment. They come with a more lengthy physical paper purchasing process, and year after year they continue to be the payment method most highly targeted by fraud. So with all these factors, it's no wonder that really organizations of any sales size in any industry are looking to switch their business-to-business high-dollar transactions to electronic forms of payment. Moving on to the next slide. This picture looks at different ways you can utilize the purchasing card program depending on its use and how it's deployed. So for the majority of your programs today, you're falling probably within that distributed category where you have employees holding physical cards and using it for travel and entertainment, point-of-sale transactions, maybe petty cash expenses. Any type of purchasing that's characteristic of smaller dollar, larger volume, that can really bypass your traditional purchasing process where requisitions, purchase orders, maybe three-way matching, and then final settlement by check is required. Where we're seeing the purchasing card use really going is in this non-distributed category, where organizations are using it for larger dollar, less frequent, and even vendor payments. And they're doing this in a number of different ways. Maybe they're giving a single vendor payment card in purchasing where they're paying multiple vendors on the card, or they're dedicating an actual single card to each major vendor. Where we start looking at this ghosted card concept is when we remove the physical plastic. So sometimes we may see in like a travel department, we have a central ghost card that's dedicated to your travel vendor so that all company travel related expenses go on that single card. Or maybe you're utilizing a virtual card for a vendor website for any recurring purchases. I do want to point out before we move into the payment economics that we're not suggesting that with vendor payments that you bypass your typical payment protocol. We're simply looking at the point of payment. So instead of issuing a check, once you've done all your approvals, it's looking at utilizing the purchasing card instead. But now let's get into the why. So the picture or the triangle on this slide is a simple payment optimization triangle, and it looks at the per transaction cost of issuing a single payment. So in its most simplest sense, there's 4 different ways you can make a payment. You can send a wire, you can issue a check, you can originate an ACH, or you can use a purchasing card. Unlike all other payment options, the credit card is the only free form of payment, and it's revenue generating in the form of a rebate. For demonstration purposes, we've used an average transaction size of about $2,500. So if I pay vendor ABC with my purchasing card, at the end of the year, I'm getting $25 back on that single payment. If I use an ACH, I'm paying 29 cents. If I issue a check, I'm paying roughly $3 once you factor in postage, envelopes, printing equipment. And then finally, your wire is the most expensive form of payment, usually reserved for your larger dollar final settlement or international needs. This introduces an interesting concept because typically when we think of payables, we think of a cost center. And this revenue stream that's now generated by the card makes it look and feel more like a profit center. If we look at a more realistic example, I have your rebate schedule in front of me. Let's say I am a school district today spending $300,000 annually. That puts me at a rebate of about 70 basis points, which means my revenue at the end of the year is about $2,100. If through a payables focus, I'm able to grow my program to about $1 million annually, my rebate is now 1.15%, and that revenue back is $11,500. And that's revenue that goes directly to your bottom line. So this is definitely something that's worth paying attention to. Before I turn it over to Brent, I did want to just point out one more thing on this next slide. In addition to being a free form of payment and a revenue stream, there's also a float benefit. So on average, we can extend your float by about 22 days. That's because when you pay a vendor on a PNC credit card, no money is coming out of your operating account until 7, 14, or 25 days after the last day of the month, depending on your payment terms. Now, many of you might be thinking, float doesn't mean anything to me in this low interest rate environment. However, you can use that float as a payment tool and not necessarily as a function of paying down credit or looking at a short-term investment. You can utilize the purchasing card to pay early to take advantage of discounts. You can extend your payment terms. You can pay faster. You can execute a number of different payment strategies depending on your long-term cost of capital and how those variables affect your cash flow. But for now, I'll turn it over to Brent so you can hear from one of your peers on how this was successful for him.
Thank you, Katie. As introduced, again, my name is Brent Kessler, Business Manager from Central York School District, York County, just south of Harrisburg, about a half an hour. And so let me jump ahead here to my slides. On the first slide, really just give you the demographics of Central York, so it gives you a little bit of our size and our district. We're $83 million budget this year. We have just over 5,700 students. We are about 32% free and reduced. We have 103 ESL students, and with that, we actually speak over 40 languages throughout our entire student body and community, so a very diverse school district. We're comprised of 5 elementary schools. We have a middle school that is 7th and 8th grade, high school. We opened our own cyber academy a couple years ago, and we provide alternative ed program K-12 in-house. So With that, we have just over 750 employees, again, a suburban school district just outside of York City. So it gives you a sense of our district. On this chart, I won't spend too much time on it visually, but I'm going to reference these two charts as I do my final two slides and really tell our story. You can see where we started in the 2008-2009 year, had just over $400,000 of annual spend, similar to some of the statistics that Katie went over, $1,900 rebate back then, and really where I'll talk through the story of how we grew it all the way up to almost $4 million most recently, which gets us to the $40,000 to $50,000 a year, and I like to call that free money. But it really has become sort of, as previously mentioned, a revenue generator and instead of a cost factor or spending money. So with that, I'll jump into a couple of slides on our story from Central York School District. When I started in 2006 as business manager there, it was interesting that they did not have any credit cards, any procurement cards in place. Everything was done by checks. And we're really talking that primarily 10 to 15% of your budget, remove the salaries, remove the benefits, even debt service. I'd love to pay my debt service on credit cards, so I'm working on that one. But really that 70 to 80% of the budget that is comprised of those three areas. What's left is the $8, $9, $10 million for Central York that is done for everything else. And so that's where our focus was. But in the past, again, the buildings, at a building level, the business office would generate purchase orders. We'd authorize the purchases. Later on, you'd receive your invoice or account statements, and then we'd spend a couple of days a month compiling all of those, booking those, writing checks, printing, entering them, printing them, mailing them, as discussed, the cost to actually do that process, and that's how it worked. So in 2008, we started the process to enroll in the EasyProcure program. We rolled out credit cards, and one of my recommendations is start small. We started very limited the first year. We had 2 cards. Superintendent had a card, and we had a card titled the Business Office. And that really became our first option of vendors that we knew would take credit cards. We just started using it. After you went through your normal purchase process, we would use that to start making some payments. Superintendent use it for travel or supplies, some of those items. And so we started at that $400,000 a year and slowly grew it. Each year we started to add cards. The following year or two, we issued 7 cards, 1 to each building principal. Not in their name. We actually called it high school principal card, middle school principal card, and so on for our elementaries. You can have some authorized users. So we'd put in the system, in PNC, you can have your 2 principals if you have a head principal, assistant principal as an authorized user, maybe a purchasing clerk or a secretary that's in charge of accounting in each building. And so we rolled cards out to the buildings. They started to use them, again, to make their purchases after their budget allocations were in place or after their purchase orders were approved. It definitely helped us become more efficient in making payments. And again, as mentioned previously, it helped achieve discounts. So some vendors would offer a 2% discount or discounts for paying within 5 days or 10 days of receiving the invoice. So it helped with that perspective. And then we set goals each year to grow that. Most recently, we added special education department, transportation, technology. We buy a lot of equipment on credit card now via the technology department. Transportation, custodial maintenance has cards. And so it's each director or each department head that has one. And that's really what got us to the last 2 years, 3 years ago. We got to that $2 million number that was on our chart. And then we really hit the focus, which I'll change slides to where we're at now. And so our current process, it has become our first option. Every bill or every payment that needs to be made, our first priority, our first option is to use the card. Whether it's at a building office level or department level, again, they have them, they use them after their approval process has taken place. As far as the business office, we have 2 accountants. What they do, again, they'll simply pick up the phone, call the vendor, call the number or customer service on any invoice. You'll be surprised how many actually accept credit card or payment by procurement card. Sometimes you can email. They have, accounts receivable at the company name or other email addresses. We'll email and ask. You can do it online. Most take online payments. We use it for Amazon and other purchases. The easiest one is to simply fill in that tab at the bottom of your invoice that says, fill out your credit card information, and myself or the authorized user will sign it and send it in for payment. So it really has become our essential tool. However, I want to be clear, as previously mentioned, it does not eliminate any of your procedures or practices in place. We still do purchase orders. We do it all online. In our financial software, we have an online purchase order process generated at the building or department level. They get approved through the business office. Superintendent has final approval, all in the system, all online. And when they're approved, then the building or department or business office can use the card to go ahead and make that transaction, place the order, or make the payment. And the second one there is we're still following all bidding, all policies, procedures, state bidding requirements, so it doesn't circumvent that process either. But for me, think of that maintenance fleet vehicle or any leased equipment or items. We bid a truck, and $30,000, $40,000, when you accept that bid, we called, and believe it or not, the dealership took credit card. Nice. That was free money again. You're going to write a check and pay for a vehicle or pay for equipment anyway. Why not make a call and see if you can use the procurement card? So it really, again, we follow all the steps, all the policies, all the bidding requirements. We just use that as that last resource, as Katie had mentioned, to make a payment. Helps with cash flow. Again, good follow-up from what was shared earlier. Ours is set for the 1st of every month, and so our payment time closes on the 25th of each month. Gives us a couple of days to review anything, and then on the 1st of the month it comes right out of our PISLAF account, so I know I have to have a balance there if we don't, and so it really helps set cash flow. Even though interest rates are low, it still gives me a month to bank those payments. You don't have outstanding checks at the end of the month you're trying to reconcile, and so you're not, again, trying to worry what your cash balance is in the middle of the month, what checks have been cashed or not. It really helps on the cash flow, and again, it takes priority at Central York. So with all that good stuff and sharing all of the good information, actually I forgot one. Our one goal for next year is we're actually adding food service card, have our cafeteria manager and food service department start to use a card. We're going to open an athletics card. So whether it's the athletic director or any athletic supplies can be used via the card. And then student activities. For any vendors through the student activities, once vouchers are approved and it goes through their process, again, use it for those 3 avenues to look to increase our spend even more. We'll get to that $100 million as a goal. As Jay said, it helps all of us, all 300 members and new members with a higher rebate. So we're going to continue to use it and grow our spend. And with that, so the last couple of bullet points there, I'll take a minute or two to share. What hesitations, what reservations, concerns, there's always those restrictions out there. So to start with, back to 2008, we did not experience any hurdles. PNC staff was great to open an account, get cards set up, and get everything approved. That process was pretty easy, pretty straightforward. We over-communicated. Can't stress that enough. We shared with our board the reasons, the why, the rebates. Again, that concept of it's a revenue generator. There's controls in place, which I'll touch on in a minute. We put our policy in place. We over-communicated with our principals and the building staff, department heads, and anytime we roll out a new card, we take a couple, a little training session to train them on the use, following our policy and procedures, but here's why and how we're doing it. So we over-communicated. The biggest one is the last bullet point there, the controls, restrictions, and monitoring. I have a couple of items on each of them, whether it's covered later on yet by the experts in the room. The controls piece for me, for Central York, you can control and put limits on every individual card. So we're up over 20 cards for each department, each administrator. You can set that at $5,000 spend, $10,000 spend. You can really limit or control the potential that a card could be used for. And a lot of those we set up principals at $5,000, maybe technology at $30,000 or $40,000, depending on their budget allocation, what their annual or monthly spend might be. As far as the restrictions, a lot of restrictions. You can limit restaurants, beverages, hotels. If you don't want that available to be used, you can restrict it. The biggest one for us is international. We have blacked out no international purchases, whether that's Canada, overseas, other places, and that's been huge. You won't imagine some of the companies that might have an international base, and so we allow no international purchases. The monitoring has two pieces really, both internal and external. So let me touch on the internal as far as a business office, business manager, financial person overseeing the program. You can log into PNC's website. There's live real-time monitoring, which I love. You can see all kinds of reports and spend history at your fingertips, just like any bank account, any home credit card. And you can change the limits there. You can add new cards or change authorized users right in on the system in real time. I had a principal call. They spent $4,000 that month, and they had a $2,000 expense yet that was approved. I logged in, adjusted the limit, the credit limit, increased it. 2 minutes later, they were able to make that purchase either online or through the vendor, and then you can later on the next day or end of the month reduce it, turn it back to what the normal restrictions are. So it's been great. I am very pleased with that in our 8 years using it. And the biggest one is the outside monitoring. The fraud monitoring at PNC has been incredible. It's top-notch. I'm very impressed. It's going to happen. You're going to have 1 or 2 cases. Again, 9 years we've been using it, 20-plus cards. Fraud will happen. Very rare, but PNC will call me. I'll get the call, and they'll say, Mr. Kessler, you have a compromised card. The middle school card has 2 fraudulent charges, which PNC, to their credit, they have a great department. How they catch it, I don't know, but they do their thing. And it doesn't even get charged to our account. It doesn't even go through. They'll say, did you authorize these 2 charges at XYZ, $1 here, or $300 and some dollars at wherever in California? And so when they're not ours, the card's put on freeze. They suspend the card. At that point, they'll cancel the card. They'll issue a new one. Within 3 business days, a new one arrives. I activate it and put it back in place at whatever department or principal it might have been compromised. So again, their fraud monitoring is top-notch. I really have no complaints whatsoever about that as a concern. And we did have one time where there were some fraudulent charges that slipped through or that went through. And within 30 days, there's a dispute form. You literally fill out 4, 5, 6 questions. It takes a couple of minutes, submit it to PNC. They do a phenomenal job. Within 30 days, it was back in our PISLAF account / it was credited back on the statements. And so I have no complaints whatsoever, no hesitations on any of the security, the monitoring piece of it. I am very pleased. And the last minute, I really just want to say from my perspective, I highly recommend it. It's a great program. It's been amazing for us. If you communicate it correctly, and I'd be glad to help provide some ideas, share some experiences afterwards. You'll have all our contact information. I would highly recommend it. PNC has been phenomenal. I love PISLAF. They do a phenomenal job on the relationship piece as well. And so with that, I'll turn it over, and I'll let some of the experts go through some more of the technical side of it. But again, it's been a wonderful program for Central York.
Great. Thank you, Brent. So I'm sure the question now is, how can we help? So we have a number of different tools that we can utilize to help you with this initiative. The first step when looking at adding a payables leg to your program is really to start with a vendor analysis. And I'm sorry, I forgot to change the slide. There we go. And this is really a best practice because it sets a framework for which vendors to target and also sets a realistic attainable spend number. So all we need is a vendor file with each vendor's name, address, and annual spend. What we can then do is take that file and bump it up against a PNC and Visa proprietary database. It's a completely internal free study. We don't contact any of your vendors. The first thing we're able to do is categorize your vendors by their card acceptance capability. So we can tell you right away which vendors are accepting the purchasing card and the capacity in which they are accepting. The second thing we're able to do is give you a return on investment analysis. So we can say, based on our conservative estimate of where your annual spend is going to be, here's what we think the value of your program is going to be once we factor in rebate, float, and cost savings by eliminating check. Due to the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all the match statuses that you do see on this slide. However, do know that it's a great starting point, and if you do need to sell the program internally, there's a nice analysis that goes along with this to provide some impactful numbers to look at. Another way we can help is with the vendor enrollment, and this is important because this stage often determines the true success of your program. Without vendors enrolled, your spend doesn't increase and all the other benefits that go along with it aren't there. So ultimately what we're able to do is give you a vendor enrollment team. So what they'll do is they'll work with you to understand the makeup of your vendors. They'll agree with you on dialogue for your calling campaign, and then they'll monitor the outcome of each vendor. So essentially, we're able to do all the heavy lifting on your behalf to help you and support you through the process to ensure that the program is indeed successful. For programs that do qualify by reaching over or just at $1 million in spend annually, we have what we call Active Pay, which is our accounts payable technology. And what that does is it lets the purchasing card process to look and feel a little more like a check run. You're responsible for producing a card payment file and uploading that into our system. Once you upload that card payment file, we will then send out automated emails that go out to each of your vendors. The email will include credit card processing information so that they can run the payment, and it will also include invoice level addenda so that they know how to apply it. On the slide, I've distinguished between two types of settlement, push and pull. In the push scenario, you can essentially just go ahead and credit your vendor's account right away, and in the pull settlement, they are responsible for actually running the card information. 9 out of 10 times, the majority of your vendors will be in the pull settlement scenario. We also have a single-use pull settlement where we can literally recycle card numbers so that every time you pay that vendor, they're not paying on that same card number. So it recycles back in the system and gives you a little more control and security around the process. But really, I mean, I wanted to keep this high level because if you do qualify, you can work directly with, your representatives here in order to understand the mechanics of this and how it might work for your program if you're interested. But now I'd like to turn it over to RC.
Thanks very much, Katie. First and foremost, I want to say we've chatted a lot of great things. Brent's examples, when he talks about it to me, is a great thought process. Really differentiates between implementation and adoption. When you implement something, you do it once and you walk away from it. When you adopt a cultural change, you have to go through multiple processes. And that's what I heard. What I also heard was a lot of the great things that he talked about, I get to cover off one final time, so it just makes my life so much easier. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Rebates are absolutely important, and certainly we will get there, but it's safety first. I love the live examples. Those are so important. Cart controls. We talked about merchant and category controls. Purchase and cash limits. We talked about that. Live examples once again. Management visibility. I think this is incredibly important in whatever it is we're doing, especially from a financial perspective. There is clear line of sight right into the activities, and if something happens that shouldn't happen, it's being reported immediately. Finally, fraud monitoring. We see live examples of when we caught it via PNC and as well as Visa's platform, and in the event that we don't, another live example of your insurance, so to speak, that's covered up to $100,000. I can't say that any better. So thank you very, very, very much.
You're welcome.
What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the overall team of professionals. That includes our team on the PSD LAF side, but before I do chat about what we do, I'd like to bring my colleague on the PNC side, because we do work on a collaborative basis, and he'll talk a little bit first. Sir?
Thanks, RC. As RC has mentioned, this program, the EasyProcure program, it's endorsed by all the members that you see on the bottom, PSBA, PSASA, PISLAF. We have a team here between RC's team and the PNC team. Myself here at PNC, I run the EasyProcure program. We have a lot of resources dedicated to help grow the program. I think as a next step, and after this presentation, is that we would like to reach out to you and help you identify potential opportunities. And that starts with the vendor match analysis that Katie had mentioned, and that's going to really allow you to really see what's the spend potential at your school district. You probably don't realize that a lot of your vendors currently accept the purchasing card. I mean, it's just a method of paying that allows vendors to be more competitive. So they pretty much are accepting it now. So with that vendor match analysis, you're going to be able to really have an opportunity to identify, what are your spend potential, and it's very comprehensive. It shows the 5-year potential, particularly on the rebate side. But I can't stress it enough is that we have a team here between RC, the PNC team, the PASBO team, the EasyProcure team in general. We have lots of members here to help you. We'll work with you. We'll help you grow the program because we believe that we will get to $100 million this year, and that's just the beginning. The program has been very successful, and it will continue to grow, and we want to work with you to help grow the program.
Thank you very much, John. Much appreciated. Great comments. And the important element here is you kept saying RC's team, and for everyone who's worked with PISLAF, I barely do any of the work. It's really the guys in the office. So I want to make sure they get all the credit in that respect. And it really is a dedicated team. We work within PASBO, PSBA, PNC, really to kind of streamline everything. Any process always has bumps in the carpet. Our job is to streamline that. We automated your payment. So as Brent mentioned, your payment comes out on the first business day, and that's for the aggressive levels that we're able to offer you on rebates. All of that is seamless. You put the money in your PISLAF account. We do the best to earn you the best rate possible, and then when it's due, we take care of your payment for you. So on your end, it's very simple, very straightforward, and most importantly, as I said, full benefit of working with the team. Now, we talked a lot of different things, and here's the big key driver in our opinion. And I'd like to actually take this from actual rebates. I want to rename this to free money. Is that okay, Brent?
Yeah, you got it. Gladly.
And what you're seeing here are live examples of a school district in a county and what they earn in respect to free money. I'm going to take your attention to York County, where there's $41,300 to someone in this room. And what did you do with the free money? Brent?
Put it back in the budget.
You put it back in the budget.
It adds revenue.
And that's an important driver. I mean, $41,000, depending on what area is and you're looking at, that's an FTE, a full-time equivalent.
It is. Yeah.
Am I right?
Yep.
Those are important drivers. And you look at other drivers. Lancaster County, $40,000. Chester County, $29,000. Montgomery County, $51,000. And again, in Montgomery County, $26,000. Cumberland, $36,000. Allegheny, $112,000. And then back in Cumberland at $80,000. This is just some examples of what schools are actually earning free money this past year. And as On said earlier, we're looking to make that more. We're looking to give you guys more money. And to us, that's a big benefit of using this program, in addition to everything else we talked about. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Jay.
All right, I want to thank the entire panel this morning. Thank you, On. Thank you, RC. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Brent. Let me just add a few closing words before we get to your questions. Again, we tried to be very sensitive about your time, so we're staying within our allocated time for presentation, and we'll get to the questions in 1 second. We did talk a lot about rebates today. I want to say that some of those districts you saw on the map, yep, they're big districts. Really big districts in some cases. But in other cases, they are not in the top 5 districts in Pennsylvania. So we showed you some other districts that maximize their spend in terms of the EasyProcure card to maximize their rebate. Again, those aren't the top 5 school districts in Pennsylvania in terms of size. I also want to talk to you about other things that we've done. You saw in the very first slide a lot of logos from the state of Ohio. Not because we particularly like the Buckeyes. It is basically an opportunity to work with PNC. PNC did a bank acquisition in Ohio that gave them a huge presence. It became a natural partnership with Ohio ASBO and their superintendents and their school board association. Again, more spend means more rebates, both individually and collectively. So that's why we joined about 4 years ago with Ohio. Talk about card utilization. It's interesting. In Ohio, they actually pay their workers' comp to the state. So their workers' comp bill gets paid in a lot of cases with a procurement card. So we're always looking to try and maximize that opportunity for you to earn more rebates. That's one way it happens in the state of Ohio. We talked a lot about the team. This has been a team effort. You should know that obviously we believe we don't start programs unless we see a need. If we go back to the history and development of this program, it was back in the days when you didn't have a procurement card, everybody just had credit cards. Again, there was a fee associated with that, and there was very little talk of anything remotely resembling a rebate. So we've come a long way in 13 years, and we want to continue to grow the program. It helps the association, it helps its members, and we think it's entirely a win-win. All right, a couple of the mechanics. If you'd like to have a copy of this presentation, we'd be glad to send it to you. Let us know by sending an email to pasbo@pasbo.org, and we'll ship this right out to you. We'd be glad to do that. All right, and so now we'll be glad to take any questions that you may have about how we could help you in terms of either growing your spend or other steps that you may want to take. All right.
Do you want me to read them?
Yeah. Vendor match analysis. Would it detail the vendor charges a processing fee for using a credit card? And can you explain the active pay process in more detail? All right, so let's talk about vendor matches and any potential additional charges for purposes of taking the EasyProcure card.
Sure. So to answer the vendor match analysis question, we unfortunately are not able to show you if the vendor will or will not assess a convenience fee or a charge on top of the payment that you're going to be making for utilizing the purchasing card. What we do try to do with the vendor analysis is organize them so that we tell you when we talk about in what capacity do they accept, we can tell you if they're already accepting post-invoice versus maybe potentially just taking it over the phone, or maybe they just have a point of sale like location where they're actually swiping the physical card. So we can help you organize it from your top most likely to your least most likely, but unfortunately you know your vendors better than we do, so we do want to work with you to understand maybe which of the vendors we need to be a little more strategic with, understanding what sort of payment terms you currently have in place, so we know how to better have that conversation with those individual vendors, depending on the current setup. In terms of the Active Pay Express, so we have a standard payment file specification that I can send you. You are required to kind of conform to that standard payment file, but the payment file does include, all your vendor information, so an email address, and then the invoice level addenda, so that we can, once that file is uploaded, we can send off those emails. Was there something in particular about the Active Pay Express that you wanted more detail on? Was it the settlement options or?
And I would just add, I would reference that similar to a direct deposit. So doing payroll for 750 employees, you have to have all their bank information, and you're doing the paychecks, sending you a direct deposit file. It's similar to that. So you're sending a vendor file that has 80 vendors in, and it'll authorize different amounts of whatever the invoice was for.
Right, with no bank information required, right? Because we're just sending an email notification.
So it's, again, about the process of trying to package up a lot of very small payments into one big payment. And one of the reasons you see this threshold on here, this would be great for every school district to make it happen, but there's some integration. I mean, technology is technology. So to get everything integrated in your school district, to enable this additional payment option requires some work. So that's why you see the minimum in terms of spend to be able to do that, because it's a lot of time and effort to make sure it's going to work as seamless as it needs to work to benefit you. Okay, how about other questions? Let me, while you may take a second or two to put your question down there in the chat box, let me also say about the reason we chose our partners in this process. We, again, want to make this the card that everybody has in education in Pennsylvania. We chose PNC as the card issuer in order that we had a provider with an in-state presence. There's other procurement card programs out there. There is a large ASBO effort, as a matter of fact, that we looked at. But we wanted that bank to be in Pennsylvania, to have a presence, and we wanted to work with our liquid asset fund, again, in Pennsylvania with a presence, to give you maximum opportunities in terms of customer service for the EasyProcure program. I think it's also important that you recognize it's not only about rebates, but it is about service. Those instances that Brent talked about of being able to change on the fly, literally, some limitations you may have, that is a very good level of service, and that's important in this process too. It's not all about rebates. It may be mostly about rebates, but that level of service is also extremely important, which is why we put together the effort that we did with our existing partners. All right, Tom Caruso has a question for you, Brent. Talk a little bit about why cards not issued in individual names versus department or building names.
Sure, certainly. The superintendent, his is in his specific name, so that's the only card that would be listed in his name. I think all the other department ones, again, some of the reason was you do have turnover. Again, we're fortunate that we do not have a lot of turnover, changing principals or changing directors, special education director, or other positions that could change every 2, 3, 4 years. And at that point, you'd be canceling a card and starting a new card. So that's one reason, just with a little bit of turnover. I think that also took out some of the fear or the concern that people were getting a private own credit card or getting their own credit card, and now they were going to be able to just go spend inappropriately. I think having the high school credit card or the transportation director credit card helped make it surely known that it was district purposes, no personal use, those types of things. And while you can put that in policy or in your procedures or guidelines, to see that on the card, I think it also helped when calling a vendor or giving a vendor the name that Central York School District, but the name on the card is Technology Department, not Joe Smith. So those couple of reasons are why we chose to do that and issue them department-wide, same as the business office. And again, as I stated, you can have 2 or 3 authorized users who would sign then for that card. And so those I can update online. If a principal does resign, retire, move on, I can go right online to the system, change it from the old principal to the new principal as an authorized user. So,
good. All right, let me just finally close. Again, if you have a question, put it in there right now. If a question comes to you after we complete the webcast, send your question to the pasbo@pasbo.org email as well, and we'll get it answered for you right away. I think I just saw Dolores Demore in Great Valley, and that reminds me, I should say, on the EasyProcure website, we're do a fresh rollout in a week, so give us a little opportunity to get that ready to roll out for you. But we have resources there. Dolores has helped us essentially with a lot of the growth. She's got a great manual that we've put on the website. The Auditor General has some guidelines, which is also available on the website as well. And there's people like Brent and Dolores and many others who would be glad to share their experiences and help you through the process. That's one good thing we've always retained as part of the PASBO culture is that individuals willing to help their colleagues across the state, and we do that for EasyProcure as well. So again, we point out those documents that will be available on the EasyProcure website that you can use, and I'm sure Brent, Dolores, and others would be glad to spend a few minutes on the phone to give you the school side of an implementation, or more importantly, if you're already a participant, about growing your spend through some of the measures that Brent's talked about. All right, with that, let me thank the panel once again. In this environment, return on investment is what it is, but EasyProcure gives you that return on expenditure. And we hope you'll take advantage of the opportunities it provides. And again, if you need any help, if you have any questions, we'd be glad to do that for you. Thanks for joining us today, and have a great day.